Thank you so much, Jacqueline, and thank you for agreeing to take part in this very important panel. In reading my point this afternoon, I can't but say that mainstreaming is one of the most important dimensions of science that still eludes us. Because mainstreaming is really about talking, sharing, integrating, interfacing, and delving into some depth into the human dimension, and really making science alive, making science real, making science part of what we feel and breathe as human beings. Because at the end of the day, without science, we will not progress. And without good science, we will not be able to overcome the challenges that we face today. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this very special science fair event organized to provide understanding of the perspectives and roles of BRS stakeholders in the process of mainstreaming science into decision-making processes on chemicals and wastes within the scope of the three conventions. As you know, the Secretariat implements a number of activities to provide guidance and support to parties for an increased understanding of the scientific basis relating to decision-making for the sound management of chemicals and waste under the three conventions. And indeed, those 2 weeks, we are engaged in decision-making. And we've had many, many reports from our science bodies, our review committees, and of course, our subsidiary bodies. These activities ensure effective delivery of the key functions of the Conference of the Parties, subsidiary bodies and expert groups under the conventions, and support other international initiatives such as SciCam and of course the Minamata Convention, and further supports parties with the necessary scientific and technical knowledge in the implementation of the conventions. As an example, the Basel Convention technical guidelines for the environmentally sound management of hazardous wastes, the Stockholm Convention guidelines on best available techniques and best environmental practices, what you call BAT-BEP, to minimize and ultimately eliminate releases of a number of persistent organic pollutants, provides parties with the necessary expertise for scientifically sound management of these hazardous chemicals and wastes. I cannot underscore how important it is collaboration with the various entities to have scientific and technical expertise complementing the mandate of the Secretariat, from big data to small data, from monitoring to global networks, while we seek opportunities to proactively and further integrate findings and research and knowledge on science related to the conventions and the chemicals and waste agenda in general to further support science-based decision-making for the sound management of hazardous chemicals and waste, and indeed link up to global development and other processes such as the post-2015 development agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. In the long term, exploring and engaging in such further new activities will provide value-added contributions to mainstream science in the implementation of the conventions and those wider global goals that I've mentioned. Such efforts will also be useful to further engage parties and other stakeholders in informed dialogue and to trigger science-based action at the national, regional, and global levels with new and innovative resources and opportunities for the sound management of chemicals and wastes. I look forward to your interesting insights from these august panels of professors lined up this morning, this afternoon, and I look forward to a very interesting debate with the floor as well. Thank you, Jacqueline.
And so this first talk is going to be on the role of subsidiary bodies under the BRS conventions in mainstreaming science for the sound management of chemicals and waste. The example under the Stockholm Convention. Next, please. And so the POP Review Committee is the scientific subsidiary body of the Stockholm Convention, as all of you know. It is composed by 31 members that are designated by the government and appointed by the COP. Among those members, there is equitable geographical distribution, and it's tried to keep between gender as well as different types of expertise. And different types of expertise is very important in this scientific committee that analyzes information in the areas of chemistry, environment, and also human health. Next, please. The main mandate of the POP-RC is to review chemicals proposed for listing in the Stockholm Convention. During the revision process, there are three steps. The first is the Annex D, that is the screening phase. During this phase, it's evaluated if the nominated chemical is a persistent, bioaccumulative, and toxic substance, as well its potential for long-range environmental transport. If the chemical meets the criteria under Annex D, it will be analyzed in the next phase, that is the Annex E. In the Annex E, a risk profile will be elaborated. And during this phase, data regarding production, uses and releases, hazard assessment, environmental fate, monitoring data, exposure, national and international risk evaluation, status of the chemical under international conventions the information will be gathered. And if the risk profile is adopted, the proposal proceeds to the Annex F phase that deals with the risk management evaluation. Next slide, please. And so during this process of the POP-RC, scientific information is the core of the evaluation conducted, especially under Annex D and Annex E phase. Next slide, please. But how is science applied in the process of the POP Review Committee? Next slide, please. I would like to go through the four main instruments that POP-RC uses to conduct a science-based evaluation of the nominated chemical: terminology, guidances from the convention, documents developed by the POP-RC, and experts' discussion. Next slide, please. And so let's start with terminology and what I mean with this topic. As usual in a scientific committee, POP-RC is multidisciplinary, which means that we have members from different areas of expertise. Moreover, during the meeting or intersessional working groups, we also have observers that participate in the process with different areas of expertise. We do know that different areas may use the same term with different meanings or different nuances of the meanings. And none of the areas are wrong. It is just that each area has its specificity. However, if we are all working in the same committee, terminology needs to be homogenized. In order to avoid unnecessary discussion due to different understandings of a term, POP-RC has been concerned since its beginning to provide interpretative guidance and define the scientific words used during the evaluation process. Two examples that I would like to highlight, because are usually involved in unnecessary discussions among participants unaware of the terminology adopted by the POP-RC, are the definitions of bioconcentration, bioaccumulation, and biomagnification that are specified in the report of the first meeting of the POP Review Committee, and the difference between the term risk profile that is used under Annex E and risk assessment that is not conducted by POP-RC. Next slide, please. Another instrument that drives POP-RC evaluation are the guidances from the Stockholm Convention text. Next slide, please. Just as one example, the text of the convention already lists cutoff values for a chemical be considered persistent. And so in the text we can find that evidence that the half-life of the chemicals in water is greater than 2 months or greater than 6 months, or that half-life in sediment is greater than 6 months. And so those cutoff values are already in the text of the convention. And so the text of the convention is our starting point. Next slide, please. but the text of the convention does not cover all the issues that may be involved in a scientific evaluation of chemicals. And in this way, when the POP-RC faces major issues or challenges in interpreting data, the committee has produced some documents to guide the members in their interpretation. Next slide, please. The main documents developed by the committee were, first, a document entitled Preliminary Guidance Paper on Bioaccumulation Evaluation that deals on how to apply the bioaccumulation criteria when the cutoff values listed in the text of the convention is not fulfilled. Another document is a guidance for drafters of risk profiles on consideration of toxicological interactions when evaluating chemicals proposed for listing. Next slide, please. And last but not least, a very important document putting together examples of practices used and decisions made in the evaluation of chemicals by the committee in accordance with Annex E to the Stockholm Convention. In this document, important and controversial issues that the committee usually deals with during the evaluation process are discussed and exemplified with past experiences and can help the committee to be consistent when evaluating new substances. Next slide, please. And possibly the reached instrument by the committee is to make science-based evaluation is the experts' discussion. Next slide, please. Those discussions take place during the POP-RC annual meetings and also during the intersessional period. And during the intersessional working groups, anyone can participate and the information is exchanged electronically. A very important point is that the effectiveness of these discussions benefit when there are experts from different areas contributing, when the participants have a clear understanding of the Stockholm Convention and the framework adopted for evaluating candidate chemicals, and when the participants are aware of the terminology adopted by the committee. Otherwise, unnecessary discussions may occur. Next slide, please. Sometimes the committee faces controversial issues that cannot be dealt with by the members, and in this case, the committee is supported by experts invited to participate in the meetings and to contribute to the discussion. Next, please. And if with all these instruments by the committee, there are scientific doubts that cannot be addressed with the current knowledge, precautionary principle may be considered. And the precautionary approach actually is already presented in the Article 1 of the Convention and is echoed in other parts of the Convention, like for instance, next slide please, Article 8 of the Convention that notes during the risk profile that lack of full scientific certainty shall not prevent the proposal from proceeding. Next slide, please. So we aimed to present the streamlined process adopted by the POP-RC as we have pointed out. Using different instruments, chemicals are evaluated with scientific principles by an international and multidisciplinary panel of experts. The outcome documents are publicly available and certainly can be helpful to countries when evaluated possibly regulatory actions at national or regional levels. Moreover, the risk profiles and risk management evaluation also provide a good source of information and knowledge to key stakeholders on the critical review considerations by the POP-ROC in recommending listing of chemicals under the Stockholm Convention. And so with this picture from our last meeting, I would like to thank the audience present here today.
And I would like to speak a little about benefits and lessons learned in mainstreaming of science in sound management of chemicals and waste on the basis of what we do in CRC, during the CRC work. So, first of all, let me find how this works. Okay, thank you. So first of all, very short information regarding the committee in itself. This is a subsidiary body for Rotterdam Convention established on the basis of paragraph 6 of Article 18 of the Rotterdam Convention. And exactly as it was said in case of pop rock, we have 31 experts as well. These are experts designated by governments. Their background is different, so it gives us, they have different kind of experience, so it gives us more possibility of sharing our knowledge and working in the frame of the CRC more effectively. And what is the most important task of that committee is to review information submitted by parties, and this is very important. Information submitted by parties in relation to chemicals that were banned or severely restricted by those parties on the basis of the national studies, scientific studies, and then national final regulatory actions, as well as reviewing the proposal for severely hazardous pesticide formulation. And then, depending on the result of the review, the next step can be listing the chemical, and then we will have new chemical under the PIC procedure. So, which are the opportunities during our work for mainstreaming of the science? First of all, I would like to make a short scheme how that work looks like, and to show you in which moment exactly the science plays a role, in which moment we consider it, we take it into account. First of all, everything starts on national level, and this is very important. That every single party plays, in case of, let's say more generally, Rotterdam Convention, and for sure then in case of our committee, plays the main role, because every single party creates data that let their decision makers to find if there is any hazard for health or for environment. So then in the end, it led them to decide on final regulatory action. So we have two lines of our work. First line is when party bans or severely restrict the chemical. If happens something like that, on the basis of Rotterdam Convention, the party has to prepare notification, which is then sent to Secretariat, and that notification has to fulfill criteria mentioned in two annexes of Rotterdam Convention. First annex is Annex 1. Second annex is Annex 2. I will mention a bit further on that. In case of second action taken by the party is identifying severely hazardous pesticide formulation. This is done again on the basis of clear information which are found, scientific information which are found on national level. Then there is prepared by the party the proposal which is sent, proposal for safety hazardous pesticide formulation that is sent to Secretariat. What happens then? Secretariat has to analyze if those two documents, I'm speaking about two, however, in case of notifications, so that a chemical review committee could start its work, we need two notifications. In case of severely hazardous pesticides, there is enough just one proposal done just by one country. However, Secretariat has to analyze, has to verify these documents if they fulfill criteria of two annexes. For notification of final regulatory action, this is Annex 1 of convention. For the proposal of SHPF, this is part 1 of Annex 4. If those criteria are fulfilled, in that moment, the rule of and the work of CRC starts. We start, the first step which we do is to analyze the notification and then to check if, I'm sorry, I've forgotten that I should use. We have to check if those documents fulfills criteria of Annex 2 in case of final regulatory action and Part 3 of Annex 4 in case of severely hazardous pesticides. And what is mentioned among those criteria? This is very important because our task as a CRC is not that we will go deeply inside the information which were enough for the country, for the party to decide about banning or severe restricting of the chemical. That the party in itself decides. We analyze if what was the base of that final regulatory action is, I'm sorry, yes. If that was taken to protect human health or environment. This is very important. And then, if the country took into account prevailing conditions. So these are two very important criteria which should be fulfilled by notification. So we don't check if the aquatic acute toxicity was tested in correct way, if the results were interpreted in correct way. No, for us it's important in some way the awareness of the country, why they've decided what they do. Yes, it should be done on the scientific basis all the time. But as I said, we never will say, you did it in the wrong way. No, we will say, perfect, you did it on the prevailing conditions. And this is what will give benefits to you. So this is in case of notifications of final regulatory actions. In case of severely hazardous pesticides, on the other hand, the base is to find the clear example. We had this kind of signs which were not just by an accident, but they were repeating in case of using the same pesticide. Ouch, I have only 2 minutes. Okay, so let's go farther. Next step. If we find that all these criteria are fulfilled, we, as a CRC, prepare rationale. And in that rationale, we did clearly explain in details why, in our opinion, proposal or notification are correct and fulfilled our criteria. Then we decide to recommend to the COP to consider listing of the chemical. And next step is to prepare draft guidance document. The document, very important one, as it is the collection of scientific information that then will be sent to every single party of the convention in the moment when the chemical is listed. Every single party will have a possibility to analyze, to study, to learn the important issues regarding the chemical. This is why I wrote that this is tool of mainstreaming. From one country, from one party that decide on something, then suddenly we spread our knowledge to other countries, giving them the chance to decide on scientific basis what they want to do with the chemical. Going further, I'm sorry. So here I will just, going further, yes. Here we have a summary of the criteria which should be fulfilled. I will just mention one more time that important is protection of human and environment. Important is what we check, if the data were generated according to scientifically recognized methods, if there was risk evaluation done on prevailing conditions, and in case of severely hazardous pesticide formulations. Very important are all information like physicochemical, toxicological, and ecotoxicological properties. So this has to be done. We don't, as I said, we don't say this is not correct. We only check if this is, because this is something that has to be given to others. Then next opportunity to share knowledge, to send it. So the next opportunity for mainstreaming of the sound management are bridging information. What does it mean? Some countries, if they don't have their own data regarding the hazard, they can use data of another country. It's possible. Of course, they have to give correct judgment, they have to present it in a correct way, then we analyze it case by case. But there is possibility like that, and this is a very important issue. And let's go to the next slide. Time over. Just 2 slides more. What I wanted to stress as well. You have to remember, as it was said in case of pop rock, all our work, all information that we are given to analyze during the review process, everything is available in public way. On the website of Rotterdam Convention, under the CRC link, you can find everything. You can find all notifications, you can find all proposals, you can find our recommendations, the reports of the contact groups which analyze the notifications. What's more, you can find the working procedures which helps us facilitate our work. So nothing is not transparent. Everything what happens during the committee works is completely transparent. And all our outcomes are possible to check by everybody who would be interested in. And what is important, during the works of CRC, there can take a part observers. Who are observers? NGOs, international organizations, non-parties, industry. They can take part in discussions. They can give their suggestions. The only what they cannot give is to decide. So just a little issue. But everybody who has something to say, who has something to put in that work is completely allowed and even more welcomed. And last thing, we cooperate with PopRock. We cooperate is from 2013. There was taken the decision by COP about meetings back to back of those 2 subsidiary bodies. We exchange our information. We prepared even the special guidance to make our work easier. And the summary. I think that the most important is to say that even if we don't analyze the data in itself, we use them. This is the base of our work. This is the start of our work. This is why the scientific data are so important, and then we let them through our deciding through our recommendation, and the DGD, we let them to go in the world to other parties. This is the most important message, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Magdalena. So I'm very conscious of the time, and I'm going to continue to harass the panel members. So our next panel member is Professor Jinhui. He's Executive Director of the Basel Convention Regional Center for Asia and the Pacific, and also the Stockholm Convention Regional Center in Beijing, China. His background is in solid waste, waste management, very long list of things to do with things. He works at the School of Environment at Jinhui University. So over to you, please.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are talking about the from science to action. So we already have a successful ceremony or event. My presentation will focus on from the regional center side, how to act, how to thinking from science to action. So my presentation will through three parts. One is the regional center, the second one is three case, and the last one is like a conclusion that what I was thinking, what we can do. We have 14 Basel Convention Regional Center, 16 Stockholm Convention Regional Center, and BCRC is one of them. The regional center function is defined by the convention, including training, information, awareness raising, consulting, and technology transfer. So from here, probably you will see the science. Where is the science? But I would like to say the science is the soul of this five function, even for awareness raising. Maybe we already realized that from Google you can look for everything, but some of them is wrong. Some of them is incomplete. So that's we need science-based information through regional center to deliver. So of course for the other function, it's also science-based. For BCRC China, we are established based on science and technology background. So we implement national project, regional project, and also have international activities. We have our focus area, such as solid waste, hazardous waste, even very specific e-waste. And also we working for POPs. We are not special on all the POPs, but we are more focused on PBDE or PFOS or PCB. So that is a very focused area that BCRC China. And we not only have a team working on that, but we also have experiment, instrument, everything that for the research, for the technology development is available for us. And we get funding from the international organization, international donors, but also we're working with the Ministry of Environment and Science Technology and also industry. So this is our regional center. The next I will through three projects that we are thinking how to combine science to action. The first one is fluorescent lamps. This is an EU project. We have many many questions need to resolve, such as fluorescent lamps is still a problem in future. Maybe say, okay, currently it's a problem, but how about the future? Because we have new types of light, such as LED. And mercury is a problem or not? How to resolve mercury's problem? Is through collection, through recycling this mercury, or through reduction of during the production of fluorescent lamps. And how about the collection? Because compared with the other e-waste, fluorescent lamps is different because we have buildings consumers, we have the public consumers, not only household. So how to establish a mechanism for encourage the collection system? So all this is scientific-based work. This project, we have overall objective. We're working with local level, together with industry, local government, local organization. And then we're working with national level, different ministries involved, and also we hope in future we can expand this knowledge to the region level. Here is the Florence Labs collection and treatment project material flow or information flow. From the red color, you will see this is like a policy or know-how knowledge transfer. It's from the local level. We're working with the industry and support the local government establish their policy. And this information is combined together to contribute to the national policy, national regulation. And we're also working with the industry to how to reduce the emission of pollutants and how to testify this is the best available, best environmental practice for Florence Labs treatment. And this one could be summarized as a guidelines, and in future, if the industry is grown up, we can use this guidance document to support the treatment of fluorescent lamps. The next is about mercury issue, but this is a technical work for the collection system. We're working with, we developed some suitable containers for collection. Also, we developed transportation tools because it's very special compared with other hazardous waste. And also how to control mercury release during the transportation and during the collection system. Next, I will focus talking about this. Another case is POPs in articles. This one is related to our lab because these POPs probably during the use stage, okay, it's safe. But during the recycling procedure, during processing, probably they have very toxic substance emission. And also, probably we need to control the pollutants emission. So this project, we are focused on two types of chemicals. One is PBDE. It's very, very common use in flame retardant. And also including PFOS, so time control. So through this one, this project, we think that we can control, we know the information, how currently the POPs in articles, how to deal with these articles, how to recycle these articles, how to control the emission during processing. The third one is work is about metal recycling. You see in the side event, we introduced in the partnership together with one of a Chinese company, Shenzhen GM company, to working on that, start this program. Maybe you know that heavy metals is a big problem, but heavy metals sometimes is resources. We cannot avoid to use it. So, but if improper recycling, larger percent of the heavy metals were missing. And this will be toxic substance and do harm to the environment and health. So for this one, it's also same, because maybe many issues from scientific we need clarify that metal resources sustainable supply. Metal recycling rate is acceptable for long term because the demand is limited. Smelting of metal pollutants emission is even sometimes is dioxin is emitted. And how to mainstream metal flow from informal sector to formal sector, because for recycling company, many of them is very, very small backyard. How to mainstream this informal sector to formal sector is also a very important concern that for this industry. At last slide, I will show how to act for that, how to define the rules of the regional centers. So the first I would like to say is provide policy support through pilot project, such as our fluorescent lamp project. We can not only benefit it to the country, the hosting country, but also can benefit it to the other country. We can, through technology verification, because many technology, some of them is not so good, some is okay, it's good. We need to find which one is best for this country. And the policy formulation. The second one is delivery testified information and knowledge, such as newsletter. We need working on the newsletter, deliver this information to the parties. That is good enough, that is have sound scientific base. The third one is conduct capacity building by science and technology forum, such as every year we have an international conference for waste management and technology. We invite government officials, international organizations, academic institutions, and also industry to involve in this information sharing. So this could be a very important science information sharing platform. Of course, other training programs also is included. To support the Secretariat to strengthen global chemical and waste regional centers network through such as a directors meeting, bilateral cooperation between centers. Because maybe we already do some work, is duplicate. So through this networking, we can reduce the duplicate work and have a high efficiency for information delivery. The last one is promote science technology flow between regions and countries. Of course, the convention itself have a control system for material flow. But for the knowledge flow, for the technology flow, is free. We can full use these tools to working with different parties to achieve the target of the convention. Thank you very much.
Let me first of all thank the management of the BRS for inviting me to be part of this very important activity. And I'll talk first of all, given the problems of chemicals and waste in developing countries at the national level, and then talk about how the science has been a gap in most of the challenges and how science can improve things. I wonder if there's anybody in this room who does not know that without chemicals we can hardly survive. Everything about life is chemicals. We've just had lunch, the food you had, there's chemical in there, in the agricultural production, in medicine, industrial manufacturing, energy generation, and public health. And chemicals also play an important role to achieve development goals, improving maternal health, reducing child mortality, and ensuring food security. Nonetheless, chemicals may cause deleterious health effects on humans and adverse effects on the environment. International Labour Organization has already given data that about 25% of workplace deaths worldwide are due to chemical exposure. And global chemical pollution from production and consumption activities remains a threat to sustainable development and livelihood. Therefore, I can say without fear of contradiction that chemicals are elixirs of life. They can make us live long. But when they are not well managed, they are harbingers of diseases and deaths, and that's not what we wish for. Then the issue of waste, they are cousins, I would say, they go together, because end-of-life chemicals or obsolete too become waste. And waste is an indicator of unsustainable consumption and production as well. And according to the Basel Convention, waste are substances or objects which are disposed of or are intended to be disposed of or are required to be disposed of by the provisions of national law. Over 500 million tons of hazardous waste, including electronic waste, are generated globally worldwide, but they are not managed in an environmentally sound manner. Illegal export of toxic waste to developing countries remains a global challenge, as these countries lack infrastructure and resources for environmentally sound management. Now, life is very interesting. Out of problems, you also have solutions. I want to bring the experience of my country, Nigeria. In 1988, a European country dumped 12,000 drums, about 4,000 metric tons of hazardous waste in Nigeria. And the guys thought nobody could analyze it. And they brought a report to government and said, oh, it's just nothing, it's enough. Luckily, I offered I could analyze it, and I analyzed it. There was a lot of pops in there. The government did not believe me. They took the samples to UK with a commissioner of police and came back to make me the resident consultant of the EPA that came out of that problem. So what I'm saying, dumping of hazardous waste in Nigeria brought about the beginning of environmental governance in the country. And there's also an irreparable link established between poverty and increased risk of exposure to toxic and hazardous chemicals and waste. Poor populations routinely face high risk because of their occupation, living situation, and lack of knowledge about the impacts of exposure to hazardous chemicals and waste. Let me also say, whether in your various lab or industry people around there, you always have unused chemicals dumped illegally or forgotten in unsafe storage areas and conditions. And this can be secondary sources to contaminate environmental media, soil, water, and air. And I want to recall here the African Stockpile Program involving FAO, where all over Africa, POPs pesticides that have been abandoned, leaking in drums all over the place, had to be gathered. But then, after the collection, I didn't see any signs. How clean is clean? Because from where they gathered them, those soils, nobody tested. So the science was missing there. Now, in developing countries, usually what is practiced is waste disposal and never waste management. Throwaway culture, believing out of sight is out of mind. And let me also say, there's little or no knowledge of material safety data sheet of hazardous chemicals. Anybody can sell hazardous chemicals in most developing countries. You can get it at the roadside. Now, those who are selling don't understand the science. And I also want to quote an example. We have what we call International Institute of Tropical Agriculture at University of Ibadan in Nigeria. It's an IGO, similar to ISIPE in Kenya. They ran to our Basel Center in 2005 and said, we lost 94 cows last year. I said, what happened? Where they were using diazinon, an organophosphate pesticide, as a ticicide. They use it for cattle dip. The concentrate is 60%, but they have diluted, they use 1% solution. And they had kept it in the sun all along. So they had changed to alternative. When they didn't have that, they put the 94 cows through. Within half an hour, they were all dead. And the first question I asked is, where's the material safety data sheet? They gave it to me, and I read it. It says, in contact with water, diazinon forms another compound, sulfotab, and this is 1,000 times more toxic than the parent compound. So I told them that's the solution. The byproduct has caused this problem. And then there's low level of awareness of adverse environmental and human health impacts of exposure to hazardous chemicals and waste at all levels of governance. So there are political and socioeconomic challenges. Now, a worrisome issue now is the shift of chemical production from OECD countries to the BRICS countries and other developing nations over the last decade. The governments, out of ignorance of the science, will clap and welcome the industries. There's no rigorous scientific examination of what product will be produced and what impact it will have on the environment. So that is a concern. And then, of course, there is weak institutional regulatory framework for sound management of chemicals and waste. Now, looking at the challenges further, you cannot have policy or have regulations in a data vacuum. In most countries at the national level, there is no systematic monitoring studies. Hence, there is no monitoring data of hazardous chemical levels, such as heavy metals and POPs, in environmental media and exposed human populations. Nowadays, 4-year-olds have cancer in many developing countries in Africa. What do people say? It is witchcraft. It's a spiritual attack. All we tell them, your child is living, has been exposed near refuse dumps and so on. Definitely, the price of ignorance here is disease and death, unfortunately. And then you have lack of a quantum of trained and competent manpower in analytical measurement science, environmental toxicology, risk assessment, environmental data management, pollutants modeling, even at the HLS of government. And there is lack of modern, well-equipped analytical laboratories for POPs, mercury and other priority pollutants, staffed with competent scientists. And furthermore, there is weak government universities interface in environmental governance. The governments hardly empower the universities to do mission-oriented research to solve local problems. Usually, the investor brings data from Europe, temperate countries, and say, look, it works in Europe. You cannot transpose data from Europe to Africa. The environment is different. So, but because of lack of capacity, it's convenient to say, oh, this thing has been done somewhere, so let me bring it here. So we need, so there's need for sound chemicals and waste management at the national level. And in this regard, permit me, Madam Chair, to say something from your establishment where you are working.
Am I in trouble?
No, you are not in trouble.
Yes, you can speak. That's
right. UNEP in 2011 developed what we call the foresight process on emerging global environmental issues and identified 21 priority environmental problems in the 21st century. I was privileged to be one of those 21. We looked at hundreds and thousands of, we got questionnaire of what we think are priority environmental problems, but the number 4 happens to be what is called broken bridges, reconnecting science and policy. And let me quote from that document. It was launched at Rio Plus 20 in 2012. To cope with global environmental change, our society needs strategies and policies that are underpinned by a strong science and knowledge base. But many believe the linkage between policy and science communities is inadequate or even deteriorating, and that this broken bridge is hindering development of solutions to global environmental change. And this problem requires a new look at the way science is organized and how the science policy interface can be improved. So if we are managing chemicals and waste, we need more, it's a knowledge-based discipline. We need to know more about the science of the chemicals and the waste, issue of risk assessment, risk reduction, classification and labeling. You have the GHS tool, approval systems, inspections, awareness and information. And then, of course, we have to look at the science of hazardous waste issues, the chemistry, and so on and so forth. Workers' health, sustainable production, cleaner production. What is often lacking at the national level in developing countries is weak chemical management framework or lack of one. And this, a good one, of course, relies on the life cycle approach, right from production to transport to storage, trade, use, and disposal. And then important elements that must be addressed, issue of chemical management, chemical risk management, disposal of hazardous chemicals, and prevention measures. And then who are the actors? The next slide shows the actors. Industry that produces the chemicals, they know the chemistry, so they have a role to play. Then government has to put in place the regulatory framework, and also in many developing countries, the chemical management regulation is fragmented between various ministries. Ministries of Agriculture is a cross-cutting issue, environment, health, industry, labor, and trade. All these have to come together. Then there are regional or sub-regional groups like ECOWAS or SADC, and then the NGOs, which have been doing a wonderful job, more in developed countries. They are still weak in developing countries to sensitize the public. The international organizations like UNEP are there, and then very critical actor, which has not been well developed, is the universities. They are the citadels of learning. And most of the actors in government train in the universities. But the problem is people just learn the basic science. They have yet to go into the science of environmental management and all that. And the importance of the chemical and waste MEAs cannot be overemphasized. The elaboration of the Basel, Rotterdam, Stockholm MEAs is part of the strategy towards the improvement of chemicals and waste management at the global, regional, and national level, based on life cycle approach. But I am sorry to say, most of these MEAs have been ratified, but they are not domesticated into national legislation. That is why hazardous waste keeps coming every week into developing countries. Now, the challenges of integrating science in decision-making, the gap in science and technology capacity at the national level is a major constraint towards adopting science-based informed decisions or policy developments in environmental governance. Let me quote from the Rio Plus 20 document, The Future We Want. It urged countries to embrace a green economy and take measures to prevent the unsound management of hazardous waste and their illegal dumping in a manner consistent with countries' obligations under international instruments. Adapting to global change and attaining a green economy, my good friends, will require a variety of new capabilities, job skills, learning ways, management approaches. Yes, I will just indulge you. Or indulge me, I would say. Chemical, this is too important.
I know, but they will say that.
Chemicals and waste environmental challenges, they continue to grow, and coping with them calls for new strategies and policies underpinned by a strong science, knowledge base, and training. And the importance of science policy, again, is very, very important at the national level, but not yet appreciated by the decision makers and the political class. Lack of awareness of risks associated with human health and the environment and exposure to hazardous chemicals and waste is a problem. Then we've talked about the weak framework. I've listened to my colleagues who talk about pop rock and CRC. I want to say that many developing countries have difficulties implementing the conventions because of inadequate scientific capacity, even to fill the obligations on that. We had a workshop in February in Zambia, Lusaka, and trying to encourage participation in work of pop rock and CRC, even for countries to fill the profile, the risk profile, is a challenge. National data doesn't exist because there's no national research. Even at times, it looks taken for granted. Yeah, access to internet can even be a challenge. But then even when you get the data, how do you manage it? The other concern is the high turnover of officers and focal points who do not have university degrees in environmental science or technology, but nonetheless, they have acquired great experience. But then they get promoted into another job, or you bring somebody else. That affects the quality of participation of developing countries in preparation for the MES and participation. I'll just round up now. So maintaining science in decision-making process is very important for sound management of chemicals at the national level. And there's already need for training. I've listed that there. And then we have to continue to embark on continual capacity building through what the BRS Secretariat is doing, the webinars, workshops, pilot projects, and so on and so forth. And then for science to have any meaning in decision-making, there has to be data gathering mechanisms put in place. Governments must fund their national universities to undertake environmental monitoring studies and mission-oriented research that will solve local problems. And then advocacy is very, very important. And finally, the arts is not a gift from our parents, but a loan from our children. So for us to have a peaceful earth, and just as this bird is at peace with the crocodile, I'm not a lawyer. I will rest my case here, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
We do have a bit of problem, though, in when we talk about mainstreaming in sound management of chemicals. We don't mainstream science in science, but we have to mainstream it with something else. And this is really the whole question we are having in decision-making. How do you bring the different scientific and social and policy disciplines together for a common understanding of this scientific information that we have? How do we translate for the people on the other side of the scientific board what is the scientific information provided, and mainly how they should understand the uncertainty that the scientists manage when they make decisions. I think Article 8 of Stockholm Convention has been clear about that. The lack of full scientific certainty should not prevent proceeding. And this is really critical when we deal with chemicals, because the full scientific certainty is almost never available. So this is one issue that the scientific community should contribute to in making this clear and in bridging with the policy community and in communicating the scientific knowledge to the populations. And this would be done through several media, but there is again a disconnect between that work and the scientific work. And those media labeling, for example, is critical, is key, but how is this connected with the scientific work under the conventions? We know the POPs, we know their dangers. The danger must be communicated to population. And I think one of the examples that really speak to that is what Professor Osibanjo indicated, the problem between the conversion from diazinon to sulfotape. This is absolutely key because the user looking at diazinon doesn't know what is behind it. So this communication is essential. And then I would like to ask you guys, what are the steps and how we can address this important issue in order so that really the scientific knowledge is mainstream in our decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatou. Any other questions from the floor? I have one question also for the panel, a very generic one, which is, when is enough science enough? When is it enough? I have many, many colleagues in the academic world, around the world, who, as they now rightly say, have been polishing the stone of the last 400 publications, and they wonder whether they could have stopped at 100. So there is a sense in which we continue down the road of knowledge where we know we're adding just a minuscule amount, and there's a whole vast array of other things that we're not investigating, that we're not doing research on. And you rightly pointed to the fact that governments need to do more, to invest more. I think the RECs, the centres, regional centres, could possibly play a stronger role there. So when is enough enough? When do the committees think they have enough? And perhaps you can combine that then with the uncertainty question that Fatou asked, and also then address the question of communication. So I'm going to start maybe, I'll start with you, Estefania, and maybe you could just answer that in perhaps a very short reflection, having heard the other panel members. Thank you.
Okay. How much science is enough, or when science is enough? I think that, yeah, when we think on the academic point of view, science will never end, right? And so you always have something to end on the scientific knowledge. And for everything, we can also always have a new information. But yes, I do understand that for when we are talking about policy making, we can't be waiting all the time for all the scientific things that can come, because science is dynamic. It will be always, the scientific knowledge will be always being added or some things being changed, but sometimes we do have a huge amount of data that can, you know, already allow for decision making. And so, yes, I think that we do need to have policymakers really need to feel that sometimes we already have science enough to take the decision and take the decision. Yes, we can't wait forever, because the science will always be, it is dynamic, as I added in my slide. We will always have something new, but we can't, it will never end. If we are waiting for an end to take decisions, we will never take the decisions.
Thank you very much. I want to say, just like my last colleague said, science, as far as I'm concerned, is a continuous exercise. Because the facts of yesterday, there may be new issues you have never thought about. There are emerging issues. Whoever thought electronic waste was going to be an issue? It was a wonder product. The ODS were wonder chemicals many years ago. So the importance of science, but we have to do what I would say directional science, especially for developing countries with limited resources. They cannot do all the complicated. How will they do result-oriented, practical solution-solving science? So to me, that requires another restructuring of the training, maybe specific science for administrators or whatever, so that they can understand. Because you are talking about ecotoxicity. I'm sorry to say, some developing countries, somebody with history can be head of EPA. So you bring all the science, it's not a toxicologist. It will look, oh, this document looks impressive, and then they'll pass it on. But the way also, Madam Chair, is monitoring and evaluation. When you take a decision, how realistic is it? And I think that way you can modify and keep on protecting the environment and the people. Thank you.
Well, I think that science is such a beautiful thing that you can work on that, and you have all the time new ideas, new sources, and so on. But in some moment, there has to be the end. You have to look at that with common sense and the pragmatic approach, because doing all the time the same, so trying to find something, and in the end you lose yourself, you can have a clear example of work as it is in case of asbestos. So I think that when you want to use the science, you always have to think in some moment with using your common sense. Is this for me enough to decide? Have I found enough proofs that this is dangerous, creates hazard? So I think that should be the message. Common sense and pragmatic approach. Let's not make another asbestos anymore. Thank you.
So my comment is 3 points. One is we know that how many chemicals in our world already, developed. The number, I think, is 70 million chemicals. If you check the website of America EPA, you will find this number is large. So the information, science information is far from enough to support in decision. This is first. The second one I would like to say is this conference is very good, have a subject from science to action. But for the linkage, who will be the linkage? The linkage is quite weak. It's not only for the different stakeholders, but also from knowledge, from the know-how. So this is second. We need to strengthen in the middle how to fill the gaps between science to action. The third one is I will highlight that the group, because the work, the science from science to action, could be divided into different layers. Someone is probably research on publication. Some is developer technology. Someone working in industry. Someone working in the government. But I think it's for the research, already said, is far from enough. And for the needs from the government, from the industry, is also far from enough. But actually, most important, I think, is the linkage between the science and the industry and the government, because one is a user, one is the science basis. So not only for this cycle, but also for the academic circle, is also not recognized by the person working on this this layer. So we call, for me, I call policy engineering. Yeah, because this one should be strengthened by the international world. Otherwise, we have a lot of information, but this information is not support to the decision makers, to the users. Thank you.
We in the developing world never manufactured. It was told to us that is a beautiful chemical, heat resistance, it's an insulator, we used it. Now, the same world, developed world, tells it's a hazardous, pops, it should be destroyed. We paid cost and profit earlier. Now, technology is also identified, you go for this technology, that technology. We are now paying for the technology as well as the profit again. So where is our interest? The unknown societies, the society which has got little knowledge. And why those things are not being addressed? While POP RC and CRC review, go into the decision making, that what options are available to the developing societies or the economies in transition for adopting the substitutes, and how to handle, and where is the lot of stress is given by the precautionary principle. Where is the principle of polluter pay principle? Why the manufacturers should not have a responsibility and should be accounted for, while POP RC and CRC making recommendations? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I ask perhaps Professor Lee to start very quickly?
2028. And many countries, they don't have the facilities. The needs for technology and know-how is there, but for the supporting technology transfer or the project level is not so enough. I think this is the needs.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm afraid we are out of time because I know that the room's probably going to be used again. So without wanting to cut off an answer, I have Fatou. Is it an answer, Fatou, or is it another question?
It's part of an answer, so I would like to quickly...
If you would very quickly, thank you. Yep.
In a few words. Maybe just in a few words, I think the precautionary principle that my friend from India said is extremely important when we take scientific decision to also look at precaution. And then the second bit of answer, which I'm sorry, I'm not stepping on anybody's foot here, just to refer to why is it that chemicals that were proved innocent when found guilty, there is a common decision? Because we have to accept common responsibility, and the conventions are for that. If you go back to the Stockholm Convention, articles on implementation, technical assistance, and financial assistance, you would clearly see that it's the responsibility of the international community to give the needed technical assistance and financial support to developing countries to address the problems connected with replacing and eliminating and banning these substances. So again, we have to insist on the fact that there is an international and global responsibility, although we are all concerned by these conventions. So that was just an element of response.
CRC and POP-RC should consider at least those companies who has earned profit, billions, while manufacturing PCB. They should contribute profit, not margin of profit, for the safe disposal of these PCBs.
Okay, well,
there are few companies.
I truly appreciate your point of view, and I think maybe it's not at the committee level, it's something at a higher political level. Can I thank you for attending, and hopefully we're just 5 minutes over. So thank you and have a great afternoon. Thank you.